After watching this video and using this information, you'll be able to pump your arms faster and more effective. Watch the entire video. Hello friends, my name is Iuriy Spasokukotskiy, and to record this video I asked two great bloggers to help me. The first one is practicing bodybuilder Mikhail Romanov and the master of scientific theory Toma. What I'm going to tell you is very important. I actually discovered the secret of a very effective shoulder pumping technique. Anyone who will try my shoulder training method will be overwhelmed of how fast shoulders would grow. I present you one of the followers of my system, Mikhail Romanov. He trained his shoulders using my system only in the past September. And here's the photo on which you can see how his delts have changed during this short period of time. It's not a fraud or a business. I give this information completely free of charge and disinterestedly, because I don't want you to make the same mistakes as I did. My delts have always lagged, especially middle and rear heads. For about 5 years I regularly and intensively trained shoulders. I increased weights and presses. I completely put into practice traditional methods of shoulder training and waited when they finally will start to grow. But it didn't happen. I understood that I need to do something. And then, when I finally managed to form all principles of the shoulder training method, I began to follow it. And after 6 months, I obtained greater results than after many years of traditional training system. I don't want you to spend your time in vain as I did. So watch this entire video carefully and you will pump yourself great shoulders in no time. So here are the basic principles of this training method. The first one. Shoulder training must be started from middle and rear delts. The second principle, after you perform 1 or 2 exercises for the rear and average delts, it is possible to give a little attention to the front delt. Or not to train it at all, since it works hardly in the day of chest muscles. For example, in the barbell incline and bench press. The third one. Exercises for the rear and middle delts must be performed in the strictly defined technique, otherwise the load will be stolen by other muscles, biceps, lats or the front delt mentioned before, and nevertheless shoulders won't grow. Fourth one. While working on the middle and rear delts, it is necessary to use principle of power, constantly increasing working weights and making less than 8 reps in the set until you reach sufficient physical form. These are swings with 20-30 kg dumbbells for the amateurs and swings with heavier weights for the professional. Point number 5. You must train middle and rear delts with limited amplitude, otherwise the workload will be stolen by trapezoid muscle. And the last point, add cheating if your working weights aren't growing, since it is critical to increase the working weights. I pumped my shoulders by watching Iuriy's videos. We've recorded an entire video about this, you can find the link in the description. Also, there is a film about the shoulder training, link to which you will also find in the description. After looking at me, you can see that this method works not only on Iuriy, and I will ask tricky questions so Iuriy would explain how and why his system works. So Iuriy, you've listed 6 points of how to train deltoids, and immediately question came to me. How about individual approach, that now everyone speaks about? Or you should follow these 6 key points and forget about the rest? Well, the individual approach is sacred. For example, Mikhail Romanov had not only middle, but also front head of deltoid muscle that were lagging. So, he begins his training with presses, but does not devote significant amount of time to them during training. He leaves enough resources for the middle and rear delts and adheres to this method in all other points. It means that he performs swings with heavy weights, swings in snatch style, and adheres to the very specific technique, certain amplitude which is necessary. So, those people whose front delts are lagging can place presses at the end of training, or even as a first exercise if there is ability to develop middle and rear delts. Now Mikhail and I think about transferring presses in the end of the training. We're doing this in order to develop rear delts even more, beginning the training exactly from the rear delts. So, shoulder consists of the front, middle and rear heads. Iuriy, you claim that it is necessary to give priority in pumping middle and rear heads. Why? Usually, front deltoids are overdeveloped. Foremost, from a genetic point of view and naturally, they are the largest ones that a man even untrained has. Front heads work in all hits, in all lifts. In the real life, there aren't many motions when you lift something sideways or to the back. Furthermore, front delts work hardly practically in all chest and triceps exercises, narrow and wide grip presses, inclined bench presses and all vertical presses. Front delts carry significant load itself. Therefore, it is usually overdeveloped. And it means we should begin training rear and middle delts so that our shoulders would become beautiful square form, that all three heads would be developed proportionally and looked symmetrical. Iuriy, you think traditional method does not consider this tendency? Well, the main tragedy is that according to the bodybuilding literature and some legends that all bodybuilders believe, vertical presses are good, if not the best exercise for the development of all three heads, so-called basic exercise. So, if you do neck presses, some other presses, dumbbell presses, and it is considered as a good dinner for all three deltoid muscle heads. This phrase belongs to Shawn Ray. Seated dumbbell shoulder press is a dinner for all three heads. Well, it may be a dinner for all three heads, but front head takes 90% of the workload. And in practice, working with an enormous number of athletes, I revealed the problem that many begin to train shoulders exclusively with presses, thinking that these are basic training for all three heads. Accordingly, lateral raises are considered as not important. Second moment, people give too many resources to presses. After you will perform 3 full warm-up sets, then also 3 full working sets, and by the time you're ready to go home, you won't be able to give intensive, effective training for all three heads of deltoid muscle. It turns out that you use the priority principle. You begin from the most developed part, front delts. And by the time all resources have already gone. But how about those bodybuilders who pump their shoulders using the classical training scheme? Those are happy fellows that Iuriy told about. And now think about thousands of athletes who couldn't correct their lagging deltoids. It is proven in practice that raises and swings are much better for these purposes than presses. Iuriy, you know what is interesting for me? That middle and rear muscles exercises must be carried out in the specific way, otherwise the workload will be stolen by other muscles. What does it mean? Better look at it in practice. Let's do some exercises and you will feel everything immediately. I will explain the key points from a scientific, anatomical and practical point of view. Watch closely. To pump middle and rear heads, so it would have specific form, like I have now, you should master shoulder training technique from the very small weights. I know that you work with 30 kg dumbbells and it will sound ridiculously for you, but you will have to take 3 kg dumbbells for the demonstration purposes. Let's begin with the correct technique. You should not rise elbow joints higher than shoulders. And down. At the bottom your arms are almost straight and bent a little at the top. The motion resembles barbell lift. In general, it's a half dumbbell and half barbell lift. I would say half raises, half lifts. So, the basic errors are workload transfer on the front deltoids. When we raise arms, we feel that the front head works more than the rest. Workload transfer on the rear head. Elbows are too much twisted to the front, sometimes even more, and they think that they train middle heads, but the main load goes on the rear heads. And finally, I consider as an error to raise dumbbells very slowly. Show us the correct technique, but slowly. You'll never lift large weights and pump your deltoid muscle that way. If you want your power rates to stop growing, start doing too accurately. One more error, you lift elbows too high. Lift them as high as you can. No, without turning, just elbows. Very big amplitude. It's pretty obvious that your trapezoid is working. As if you would perform narrow grip lifts. Now let's try to take bigger weights and show working style. Correct technique, 20s, if you can. And then we will invite Artyom to make the same. Beginning like that. This is usual Michael's technique. And you work like that with your 30s. Now let's give an opportunity to Artyom to experience the same. Take the small ones, 3 kilograms. Straight hands. Let's first try the correct technique. Like that. And your elbows go literally 1.5 centimeters higher than fists, you see? Lower straight hands, and again, half lift, half raise. Wrist is tensed, it cannot be bent. Right, continue. Make it 10 times, like that, and say, do you feel your shoulders, middle, head particularly? I feel it already, indeed. Now we'll show you usual errors which people do when they come to the gym. Usual errors. They raise hands and turn them out at the top. This is usual technique. You feel something else? Yeah, I feel that my back is working. To be honest, Alexander Boychenko was the one who told me the secret that the elbows must be held 2 centimeters higher than fists. This was the man who had incredible massive shoulders. His one arm was bigger than whole me. Did you feel your shoulders? Yeah. Today I'm going to torture Artyom. One more error. The high lift of dumbbells, full amplitude. Well, full amplitude, which is very popular in gyms, transfers the workload here. It means that shoulder will work less and trapezoids will work more. Place dumbbells and rest. As a man who just walked in and tried a fresh one, so according to these points which I described earlier, did you understand what it means when one muscle steals the load from the target muscle? Yes, it came to me very clearly. When you overwork, the load goes on the back and the trapezoid muscles, and deltoids are not working. And now, as Artyom did, take dumbbells and try to make this motion not as usual, but try to perform the exercise using strictly defined technique. But exactly the same warning I want to make about the rear head. We're gonna need a bench. Now we'll show you the rear deltoid muscle so that you could understand about what muscle we're talking about. You can see it from behind in positions on the side and from behind. If we raise a hand, we see it on the shoulder from behind, rear deltoid muscle. And now we'll talk about certain technique. First, let's make a line rear delt raise. Arms go a little back and then bring them together. Maybe not so much, but hands retract backwards a little. This is a very frequent error, and as a result people try to raise their head because it is considered correct to make entire exercise with a straight spine. What it gives us? The head raise trains the upper section of the back. This shoulder blade mixing transfers the load from deltoid to trapezoid muscle. And again, after all, the elbow retraction turns on trapezoid and widest muscle of the back. Does this remind you a deadlift? Very similar motion, designed for latissimus dorsi. Now let's try to make the same, but with lowered head and raising dumbbells a little forward and with limited amplitude. Make it 10 times and say, do you feel the load in the rear head? I can see that visually you had your shoulders working, not the back or trapezoid muscles. Let's take 20s and put the bench in front of the camera so that audience could see the rear deltoids by bringing your arms forward as much as possible. Now let me show too. I did like that before, raised the head and felt only my back. It turned out that lowering head is a must. There is this version, and there is beloved version of Arnold, turning forearms forward. But now I feel very clearly how the rear deltoid muscle works. Arnold didn't have enormous shoulders. Yes, maybe, but nevertheless he also gave the advice. If your shoulders doesn't grow, take maximum weight and make exercises with short amplitude. It means that he knew this secret. The secret about what you should do if presses don't help. Arnold's presses didn't just justify themselves in practice. Well, yes, actually he wrote about it, about the fact that Arnold press is not the most effective exercise, unlike the swings with partial amplitude. If you do not believe me, you can at least believe Arnold. And now Artyom comes on the stage. First, make as usual people do in the gym. Make the raises back, head is up. And you must feel that your back works more than shoulders. Now try not to raise dumbbells so high. Turn your arms a little. Bend your arms and swing forward. Use the motion in which the hand will be perpendicular to body and try to feel difference. Yeah, feel. I ideally show the technique, sensei. It burns. Iuriy, can you guarantee that your system is more effective than any other one? I've been searching for the most effective shoulder training system for 20 years, and I must say that this compiled system is the best. Those methods which gave result in practice to me and offer athletes, all of them are included in this system. Really, I would be glad if some specialist or outstanding trainer called me and said, Iuriy, I know that the method of shoulder training that is better than yours. And if it proves to be truth, then I will have enough courage to recognize this system as even more effective. 20 years have passed and it didn't happen so far. But friends, you don't judge the system by me and by my deltoids. I'm usual skinny guy. Even Michael is still skinny. During bodybuilding competitions, to my astonishment, different bodybuilders whose deltoids were as huge as my head came up to me and shook my hand and said, "Your system helped me a lot. It actually works." After this, I was convinced of the fact that you should not judge by one person and it is necessary to conduct massive studies, and I gathered many comments. Just think, it is possible that someone among your friends trains his shoulder without any success as I did in my home, loses his time, even traumatizes, loses health. By sharing this video, you will help pumping shoulders everyone you know, just as I do now for free. Think about it. Friends, we say goodbye to you and wish you to pump yourself great shoulders, constantly progress in your trainings. We wish you to be successful in all your endeavors. Goodbye, friends.